Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. I'm Shawn with the Danley team, and this lovely lady is...
I'm Tiffany with the Danley team.
And today's gonna be a little bit different. We're gonna do it podcast style and test out our new microphone.
Hopefully this is good volume and nice and clear for you guys on that side. We want to remind you, if you like our channel, we're trying to bring hyper-local content about our area that we live in and love, and it's the Prescott area. So if you like it, make sure you hit that button to subscribe for new videos weekly. Also, if you're thinking about anything related to real estate in our area, give us a call.
Well, I'm country all the time. Yes, I was raised in the fields of hay between the Mason-Dixon lines. You can hunt me down 20 years from now.
So we get calls all the time about people considering a move to the Prescott area, and maybe they want a smaller town, slower pace of life, all that good stuff. Well,
more laid back.
Fun fact, we're actually from a big city. Not California, LA, or Phoenix, or anywhere like that. We're actually from the city of Lost Wages, Las Vegas, Nevada. Both born and raised, and moved to Arizona in 1996. And we've been all over the Arizona area, but we're going to talk about what it's like in this small little place we call home of Prescott.
So it's a big leap to jump from a big city where you have modern amenities and everything at your fingertips or just a few minutes away. And it can be scary at times, but there are some big bonuses to living in the country. I personally don't think I could ever live in a big city again. In fact, I get a little anxious, if you will, when we go down to Phoenix and people are zipping by me at 85 miles an hour. So I think there's definitely some bonuses of living in a small town. What do you think?
For sure, for sure. I mean, we've been living on acreage for the past 15 years. I don't know that I could ever go back to a big city, even though we grew up there. It's such a different pace of life. And so let's talk about some of the things, I don't know, wherever you want to go with this.
All right. So one of the things that comes to mind immediately for me with the big city, because we do go down to Phoenix on occasion, is traffic. I hate traffic. Like, that's not a secret by any means if you know me. And I do tend to have a little bit of a heavy foot. But that being said, small towns, one of the bonuses is there's not as much traffic. Now, you'll get a little bit of traffic when you have visitors in town for an event or for, you know, like the whiskey off-road or something like that. But it's nothing like big city driving. And
on the weekends, I mean, a lot of our tourists come from the Phoenix metro area. We're only 90 minutes away, so we do get a fair amount of weekend traffic, northbound and southbound I-17 traffic, making their way out of the big city to the mountains. So we do get some of that, and you can't really avoid that. But you know, and if you're coming from, you know, rural Wyoming or rural Iowa or somewhere where you're in a town of, you know, 300 people, moving to Prescott, Arizona with a metro area of 100,000, sure, that's gonna feel big. It's gonna feel pretty congested, and you know, you're gonna complain about traffic and all that sort of thing. But
for the most part, though, it's pretty reasonable. I think the worst part of the traffic here is the visitors, right? The swelling of the population for people coming up to visit, and the tourists. And then you also have people, you have one of two, right? So you either have the people that think that it's an F1 race going down the 69, or you have those who are out for a Sunday stroll and you're stuck behind them. So those are kind of the two types of drivers we have in our area.
But you have to remember, you know, Phoenix Metro has nearly 5 million people. And so our metro of 100,000, I mean, it's going to feel a lot different.
And I think another thing too, with being in a small city, especially our small city, we're rated on many lists as a top place to retire. So a lot of people, they don't have to be doing a 9-to-5 job. And a lot of people that are still working are working remotely. So it's not like you have that rush hour. So I think that's kind of a bonus of being in a small town as well.
Yeah, that's true.
That takes us to our next thing, which, speaking of traffic and road rage and grumpy people, I feel like Prescott has the friendliest people. And it's funny, we'll meet multiple people you know, over time or over the days, and they're from other places, and they always comment on how nice and how friendly our people are here. Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree. I would agree. One thing in common you'll find is, you know, 85, 90% of the people are from somewhere else. So there are some locals here, but there aren't, you know, I would consider folks that are born and raised here. You know, those are few and far further between. So you've got folks that are coming from other parts of the country to retire to the Prescott area. I mean,
or to raise families. I feel like there's a whole, you know, it's
there's definitely a new generation of people that are moving out of the big cities to a slower pace. You know, maybe they're considering homeschooling their children. Maybe they want to get their kids involved in 4-H, and you can't do that if you live in Manhattan. You know, so there's definitely a new influx of generations that are moving into the area. But for the most part, like Tiffany said, you know, top 10 place to retire for the past 40 years. It's been on Forbes list many times as a top place to retire. And that's no secret. The secret's definitely out. And thanks to a lot of you and this YouTube channel, it's definitely on the map now.
But I feel like people have chosen to live here and they're just happier in general. I know that probably seems like a load of crap, but it's really not. The people here are super sweet and super friendly. On occasion, you'll have one that say, oh, where are you from? You're not from around here. But the next thing that takes us to small town. So with a big city comes a lot of regulations, and some would say over regulations. I feel like living in the country or living in the small town that we live in, and not all of Prescott is country, don't get us wrong, but it's definitely smaller than your major metros, your Denvers, your Miamis, your LAs, your Seattles, your Phoenixes. You know, that being said, there's a lot more freedom, I guess, if you will, in a small town than there are in maybe the larger metros that are really highly regulated.
Yeah, I mean, whether it's, you know, city, municipal regulations, you know, here's a prime example: chickens. You know, a lot of people say, "Oh, I want to move somewhere. I have a little more space between my neighbor and I, and you know, we want to raise chickens." So, you know, there's a lot of municipalities, a lot of cities that they don't allow it, or you know, maybe they don't allow roosters, or they limit the quantity at which you can have those.
3 hens, if maybe that's it. But I think with a lot of the big cities comes a lot of big HOAs as well. I mean, Phoenix is heavy in HOAs, and HOAs aren't going to allow that. So having that ability, if that's something, you know, especially when egg prices were up at $7, $8 a dozen last year, it's nice that you have that ability here. Back to traffic, but kind of related, not related, smog. So when we visited Phoenix in the past, I know on occasion I'd get headaches from the smog. It can get really smoggy. There's, you know, like Shawn said, over 5 million people that live there, and you know, you're gonna get exhaust fumes, right? And so being kind of in a small town or in the country, especially up here where we have the pine trees, which are helping clean out a lot of those, you know, smog pollutions and pollutants, clean air is definitely a big bonus.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And you don't have to smog test your car here. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but
I feel like the trees help though. Like that's a built-in smog test, right? Like I feel like it's helping. So,
whether you are looking to create a little homestead, you know, for your retirement, or you're still working and you want to try to live off your land a little bit more, you know, moving to the country, you're going to leave the container gardening and you know, small scale gardening,
patio gardening.
Yeah, that all kind of gets left behind you. And, you know, if you buy an acre or a couple acres, you're going to have the, you know, flexibility and the ability to do some bigger, broader things, you know, create a little small homestead.
Maybe you have a greenhouse. Maybe you decide you're going to raise a beef cow every year so that you have fresh beef. You have the ability. There is a ruling or a guideline, I guess I should say, with Yavapai County of how many of what you can have on your acreage, but you know, you have the ability to have it. So that's kind of a nice thing. Even if you think, maybe one day I'll have animals, I don't know when, but I want the ability, then that's kind of a bonus of being in the country. Or you can turn into a crazy homestead person like me, who likes everything with hooves and would have one of each if this lovely guy would let me.
We talked about space between you and your neighbor. Obviously Prescott Valley, Prescott, Chenio Valley, Dewey Humboldt. I mean, they all have their smaller downtown cores, which is going to be much more urban, tighter or higher density, tighter spaces between you and your neighbor. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, the county. So outside of city limits, the ability, what that does in terms of density, space between you and your neighbor.
You can sneeze without your neighbor telling you, bless you.
Yeah. And, but that said, if you're leaving, the city life behind you, you're from Southern California or you're from Denver, Colorado, and you're living in the big city with paved roads and streetlights and sidewalks. Many of our rural areas, they're not going to have any of that. Gravel roads, no sidewalks, no streetlights.
Even some of our master plan communities, there's a new one in Prescott. They don't have sidewalks on either side of the road. Some of them do. Most of them have a sidewalk on one side. But yeah, if you get into the acreage communities, a lot of it, you may have a paved road going in, but you may just have chip seal or gravel getting to a lot of the houses. So that's something to keep in mind. And that takes us to our next topic too, and that is you're likely not going to be in a rural setting, even in our small towns, and be 5 minutes to, your favorite grocery store, Trader Joe's, Costco, whatever it might be. You're probably going to be like a 15-minute, 20-minute drive, especially if you want acreage. There's homes of all types in Prescott Valley and the Quad Cities. But for the acreage and more rural country setting, you're probably, like I said, 15, 20 minutes. I know there's some Facebook pages where everybody's always razzing our local mayor. We need more grocery stores. Well, we have a bunch of grocery stores. You just have to drive a little bit to them. So that's something to keep in mind.
But I think that's okay. And I think, we've had clients this past year that say, I need to be within 5 minutes of everything. They came from a planned community and it had, its own little neighborhood stores and shops and convenience store and gas station and grocery and all that, restaurants, bars, all that kind of stuff within 5 minutes. Not going to really find that.
There's a couple areas you'll find like a local market, like in North Prescott Valley, we have Robert's Marketplace, and you can get, vegetables, certain produce. You can get some, drinks and stuff like that. There's a little restaurant next door. But for the most part, it's not going to be, 2 to 5 minutes. You can't walk. You're not going to get in your, get on your shoes and walk.
So I think that takes a little bit to adapt, driving a little bit further.
But then you're more intentional when you're leaving.
I think so. We joke, we've been on acreage for the last 15 years and we say, we're going to go to town, even though it's 15 minutes away. So, it sounds ridiculous, but it's just a different mindset. So keep that in mind if you're considering, an acreage community in the area.
Okay, last but certainly not least, we have many people who come from major metropolitan areas and they think, I'm going to go to Podunk, Prescott, because they say Prescott like biscuit, so it's got to be Podunk. And they're going to think, a lot of them think that it's going to be super cheap. Well, unfortunately, the secret's out on Prescott and Prescott Valley, and it is no longer cheap. There's definitely, there's so much charm and there's so many things going for our area, even though it's a smaller, like Shawn said, 100,000 population. But it's definitely not cheap. It's not dirt cheap. We were just reading a stat today, North Prescott Valley on average for like a 4-bedroom house was in the 600s. So, it's definitely not cheap. It used to be a lot more affordable. There's still some affordable areas, but just because you're going into a smaller area, it's not going to be cheap.
Yeah, that's true. We get a lot of folks that reach out to us and say, we want this and that and 2 acres and 3-car garage
and a big shop,
2,500 square feet, and we want it for $500,000. Well,
doesn't exist anymore.
5-7 years ago, maybe, not anymore. Of course, that's probably the case for most parts across the country. Costs have just risen and immensely over the last several years, and Prescott's no different. So keep that in mind. If reach out to us, we're happy to kind of put some things together for you that might meet and fit your needs, you know, but it's no longer affordable.
I would say though, like the cost of living for goods and fuel and that sort of thing. I know when the fuel prices spiked last year, Prescott was having lower fuel prices than the Phoenix Valley. You know, groceries aren't ridiculous, that sort of thing. So I think there's some offset, plus our utility costs are not outrageous. I know we've had people that have come from Southern California that are paying like $800 every 2 months for power. That's something that's unheard of here. So there's a give and a take with it. If you are going to the country and more rural, you're likely going to have, you know, a well and septic, so you're not going to have a water and sewer bill. So that's a little bit of an offset too. I would say that it's not crazy expensive, but it's not crazy cheap. So it's kind of in that median average price range. So yeah, I think that wraps it up for today's video.
Very good. We appreciate you sticking around and checking out the channel, supporting us. We really do try to comment. You know, if you have something specific you'd like for us to talk about in an upcoming video, drop a comment in the comment section below. Be sure to check out some of the links that we often post about, you know, various things throughout the area. And if you're planning a potential visit, we are happy to take you around and show you the town, see if it might be a good fit for you. So
we sure do love it, and a lot of people do.
All right, guys, we'll catch you on the next video and see you in the country.
Well, I'm country all the time. Yes, I was raised in the fields of hay between the Mason-Dixon lines.